Aloha and good morning, Dr. LaCroix.
Hello.
Please state your full name for the record.
My name is Sumner LaCroix.
And please give a brief overview of your qualifications to opine on antitrust and other economic matters.
Okay. Let's see. I have a PhD from the University of Washington from 1981. I've been a faculty member at the University of Hawaii at Manoa since 1981. I retired in 2016 from the University of Hawaii faculty. I'm still actively engaged in a wide number of research activities. I'm also a research fellow with the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization. With respect to antitrust, I taught undergraduate courses on law and economics and industrial organization, which featured antitrust issues many times at the University of Hawaii. And I've been engaged by private firms in Hawaii and outside of Hawaii to consult on antitrust issues and be an expert on antitrust issues.
Is the microphone on?
Good question. No.
Is that better?
There we go. Okay.
Are you the sponsor for responses to the Consumer Advocates Information Request number 10?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Are you the sponsor for the responses to the Consumer Advocates Information Requests number 10?
Yes.
I'm not going to have you read them.
Okay.
I just want to. And you also are the sponsor for the response to Innergex's information requests 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
Did you identify any potential issues or concerns with solar contract bid procedures utilized in association with the pending proceeding on the proposed PPA between MECO and solar energy sellers, including Innergex?
I think that the main problem I had with the bidding procedures was the use of shared representatives. There were 3 different levels of problems. One was the use of a single law firm to represent numerous bidders bidding on projects. The second one was the use of a single attorney at a single law firm for doing that. And the third was a single attorney filing shared filing comments to a court or to the PUC on the basis of several different clients in a single filing.
And how does the bidder's use of a common attorney raise questions about competitive outcomes?
Well, the use of a common attorney by 2 bidders represents a direct conflict by the attorney. If the attorney advises bidder A on how to better get the contract, just by definition, bidder B is less likely to get the contract. If the attorney advises bidder B on the contract, a better way to get the contract, then party A is hurt. And so usually in those types of direct conflict situations, those are prohibited by ethical codes. Sometimes an ethical code will allow for the 2 parties to get together and say, we'll waive this problem. We'll get together and we'll just decide that, yeah, even though there's some conflicts, we'll waive this problem. But in the case of bidding, there actually is a third party that's out there, and the third party is the seller. In this case, it's the consumer. So if the 2 parties essentially are represented by the same attorney may essentially advise both to bid a slightly higher price, looking at the state of competition in the market. And even though neither party might be hurt, particularly if there's multiple projects that are up for consideration, consumers would be hurt. And so this is the type of project where it just shouldn't be allowed to have shared representation, even if the parties that are sharing the representation have put forth waivers.
Okay. How do similarities of terms across contracts indicate causes of concern for competitive bidding?
The similarities came about because of adjustments to the RFP that occurred late in the contract process after the prices had been agreed to, and then individual parties sat down with PUC representatives and with ECO representatives and negotiated a final contract. The problem is that because so many of the clauses that were negotiated for the different projects. There were 7 different projects that were reviewed in the documents, had the same clauses. Part of what this says is that the attorney could have used information on what individuals parties wanted and leveraged that with the company. And that could have ended up with better terms for the people in the projects and worse terms for consumers.
How would such shared knowledge regarding standardization of numerous contract terms affect market competition?
That's hard to say. I mean, it could positively affect market competition. Sometimes standardization of contracts makes it easier than just for people to bid on the contract. When the contracts are standardized, it's then easy to compare the prices that are bid on the various contracts. On the other hand, standardization of contracts may also facilitate collusion on prices because there's really nothing else to decide but the price. So there doesn't even have to be direct communication. There could be some type of rotation of who gets what projects.
Have you got recommendations for more appropriate bidding and contract procedures?
Well, I just don't think that shared representation is something that's useful in this type of bidding procedure. And for competitive bids, I think shared representation should just not be allowed. And I would say the same thing for a single law firm. For a single law firm, one can make a little better case if the law firm had firewall procedures in place that might suffice if the firewall procedures generally worked. In my experience, firewall procedures are usually extremely imperfect, and it's very difficult to enforce them. That basically just comes out of my experience with the financial world when I was a professor at Columbia University in New York City. They have these arrangements all the time in the world of finance, and they break down all the time. And I think within a particular law firm, this could also happen. The NDAs which are put in place, the non-disclosure agreements, are certainly a step in the right direction. I mean, if this type of shared representation was going to be allowed, that's an improvement on the process where people have to essentially sign a non-disclosure agreement that they won't share confidential information across the different parties. The problem with that is that if you are going to share confidential information, you'll still sign the agreements. I mean, it's useful in the sense that it does raise the bar. It's going to reduce the amount of information that's shared. But people who are sharing information are still going to go ahead and sign the agreements. It's a very weak enforcement tool.
Okay. And did you, in answering Innergex's information request 3, did you revise your testimony that you found no evidence of price fixing in the PPA? I did not find any evidence of price fixing in the PPA. I mean, there is no direct evidence on my part. The shared representation is what I would call a facilitating practice. And the facilitating practice is just it's a red flag that this increases the chance of collusion in the market. Facilitating practices aren't necessarily all bad. I mean, in some cases they can also have a positive side. It could well be that the facilitating practice of the shared representation essentially just allowed all the different firms in the market to point out problems in the RFP contracts, and that by getting rid of problems in the contracts that everybody benefited, that down the road there's less problems that would benefit the producers, the consumers, and HECO. So the thing with facilitating practices is they're not black and white, but in this case also raises a red flag that it could be facilitating some type of collusion by the parties. But I have no direct evidence of that. All I have is the facilitating practice. On the other hand, when I saw in the responses, and I didn't see this until after I'd submitted my testimony, but when I saw it in the responses that Calaboso and Yamamoto was filing motions with the PUC on behalf of several parties that they're representing on different projects, that struck me as direct evidence of collusion, not with respect to price, but with respect to the fixing of contract terms. Under antitrust law, the fixing of contract terms is equally illegal to any restraint of trade. It's not looked at as serious a violation as price fixing, but it's still a violation of the Sherman Act. Okay. And then finally, could you explain or respond to the comment that there's just not enough attorneys who can represent developers?
You know, the thing is when you have a law firm that's very experienced and has people who have experience with the PUC and generally provides good representation to people, it's not surprising that firms might gravitate to that firm. That's, I think, is just a normal practice that people look and say, I really want to find really good attorneys for this. These people seem to be the best attorneys, and they all gravitate there. But on the other hand, when the issue was raised over the summer with the PUC, and there was a little bit of back and forth on the issue of shared representation, I noticed that Pono Power went out and got excellent representation in town with Schlecht and Ito, a well-known law firm with a good representation, with a good reputation. So, I mean, this idea there's only one law firm available, I don't think is correct, but it's also a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you allow basically everybody to gravitate to the one law firm, there may only be those people.
Time is up.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a recess for lunch, 1 hour. We'll be back here at 12:50 to continue. The other piece of information, I don't think we can guarantee that we will finish today. I think it seems possible, but at this point, I don't think it's a guarantee. So I think we need to at least reserve the right to reconvene tomorrow morning. Thank you. We're in recess.
Wonderful. It didn't turn itself off, so you got to hear our awesome expert, Dr. Sumner LaCroix, clearly state that there is evidence of collusion and violations of the Sherman Antitrust Law. So we're going to lunch now. We'll be back in an hour. I'm going to turn this off, and we'll see you in an hour. And I just want to let you know that this is because I broke my arm up here, like up here. So can't cast the whole body, but I'm healing rapidly. Thanks for joining us. Aloha.